You say you don't support reparations. Why not?
Not everybody suffered equally. I mean, when you go into slavery, it's much more complex than white people were the oppressors and black people were the victims. If you dissect it, you will find there were about 3,700 free blacks who owned 12,000 slaves, black slaves. The question is, do the descendants of those free blacks who owned black slaves, do they pay? I'm Bob Woodson, president and founder of the Woodson Center, a national not-for-profit that helps low-income people in 39 states to develop solutions to the problems of poverty in their community. And but I have been critical of those who have been using that rich tradition of civil rights as a bludgeon against the values of this country. And I really think that the whole issue of reparations is an extension of that misuse of the rich legacy of the civil rights movement. My more cynical self says that this is more about the elections of 2024 than it's about, reparations from 1619. I think that the whole issue is a deflection, is a reflection away from the real problems and challenges facing majorities of blacks around the country. They are, the whole narrative is driven by what a colleague of mine called a small group of guilty whites who are seeking absolutions from crimes they never committed, and a group of entitled blacks who are seeking absolutions from injustice they never suffered. And I really think this is the whole issue of, as I said on Dr. Phil, is that it's more complicated than whites are guilty and blacks are victims. There were 3,700 blacks who own, free blacks who own 13,000 slaves. Well, do the descendants of those people pay? You have Native Americans on the Trail of Tears going from Oklahoma. They had 3,000 slaves that they took on that journey to Oklahoma. Well, do the descendants of those Native Americans pay? Covert, and so there are a lot of contradictions here. It's such a complicated who pays and who benefits from it, that it's really a waste of time and energy. But again, I think it's really a deflection against the real problem, but it's having lethal consequences for low-income black communities. Low-income black communities having a 9/11 every 6 months. More blacks are killed in 1 year by other blacks than were killed in the 40 years by the Klan. And so tell me how reparations could address that critical crisis. And for then the advocates for reparations to posture that therefore the only way that Black America can benefit and be uplifted is for white people to offer reparations. I mean, what does that say about the capacity of blacks to be agents of their own uplift? It says that, and so in order to solve a problem, you got to properly diagnose it. And reparations is no answer for the challenges facing large numbers of blacks in these cities. It's lethal to continue to direct attention away from the critical problems and challenges facing Black community, and reparations is a major distraction. 17 on Mother's Day weekend, 17 blacks in 2 cities were shot by other blacks. A 10-year-old girl was riding home with her family from a Mother's Day dinner, and she was shot and killed in a car. Tell me how reparations would address this crisis. And so it is important for us to look at what is a priority here, and what are the solutions that we're seeking. And Black America is and not only Black America, but all Americans, our children are in a moral and spiritual crisis. I'm laughing because some people can't even tell who their fathers are today, let alone trace their ancestors back. And if they did, were those ancestors slave holders, or were they slave masters, or were they slaves? I mean, there's the whole preoccupation with the time and energy that we can spend tracing our history ought to be spent in mending the healing, the wounds that are in our own community. For Black America, I recommend a 1-year moratorium in talking about white people at all. I think in order to solve a problem, you have to first diagnose it. Most of the wounds that are being, the orgy of self-destruction is going on within the Black community. There's nothing white people can do to change this orgy of self-destruction. Either the taking of drugs or violence or despair or unemployment, discrepancies in our health habits and all of these lists of pathologies that exist can only be changed by the people suffering the problem. 2024, as long as Blacks can stay in a state of agitation and anger, and they are directed towards race as the source of that solutions, I think that they're willing to sacrifice Black bodies to get Black votes. With the president's numbers declining, they have to do something to keep the Black community in line, and race is a sure strategy, because when somebody's into a constant state of grievance and agitation, they're much more easier to control. You can do nothing constructive to your interests when you're angry or aggrieved. You can't make love, you can't eat, you can't sleep, but you can vote. It's a ploy. You know, it's a Gordian knot. It's just keeping us all at each other's throat. And it's being used cynically by people who really are trying to undermine the fundamental values of this nation. But they're doing this using social justice for Blacks as the bait. And then they really turn on the very values that enabled Black America to achieve. Black America, the great story in Black America isn't that we suffered under slavery and Jim Crow, is how we achieved great successes in the face of that oppression.